Hashem Yitbarach. Okay, so Be'ezat Hashem, as we are continuing along the Lamitet Menachot, the 39 Menachot, we went through Choresh, plowing, planting, harvesting, right, or reaping more accurately. Now, the next Menacha is the Menacha of Me'amer, the Menacha of gathering. Okay, meaning in the olden days, obviously after they cut everything. So what they would need to do is they would need to gather everything that they cut, make a bundle out of it, tie it together. Okay, so this is the minacha of me'amer. Now, the minacha of me'amer, it's the most commonly used form back in the day, which we don't really have too much for our days, was when they would take, for example, figs, okay, dried figs, and they would press it together. They would make a fig cake, right? It's not so common now. I remember growing up myself that we used to have it very often until there started to be problems with bugs in terms of the figs. But if we were to take all those figs and those dried figs and press them together to make them in type of cake, this would fit under the category of me'amer. Okay, the same thing would be to make to make um to make like a necklace out of them. Okay. Now it's important to know that me'amer, gathering, is something that applies only to uh, things that grow from the ground. Okay. So some example of what could technically be me'amer but won't actually be me'amer are the plastic beads. You know, the kids, they have those small the beads, and they like to make a necklace out of it. They make a bracelet out of it. So they have to put those small beads. It's like glass beads or something of the sort. They put it, and then they make a chain out of it. They make a necklace, a bracelet, all those things. There's no problem of me'amel over there. Why? Because those are the beads itself are not something that grow from the ground. Sorry, there would be another issue though. Of that would be mitaken mana, or if they were to tie the string afterwards, it would be kosher. But in itself, it's not a problem. Okay, so for that reason also, right? When we say that there is a problem of gathering, when we throw candies in the shul, there's no problem afterwards for the kids to go around and to start gathering the candies, putting them in the basket. There's no problem, because once again the candies don't really grow from the ground, number one. And another option, or another way out of it, is because it's not being done in the place that it's grown. So an example of something that could actually be me'amel for nowadays would be if a person is carrying a basket outside. Okay, they're carrying a basket of fruit. They want to have a picnic or whatever it is, and for what it just happened to fall. The fruits fell. They spread out. They're all over the place. You would not be allowed to, at this point, go gather all the fruits, put them in the basket again, because since it's in the field, right? These stuff, they grow like the fruits, they grow in the field, they grow on the tree, they grow outside, and when you put them in the basket, you're considered to be gathering them together, even though it's not with a string. If it's not with tying, it still doesn't mean that it still fits under the category of gathering it. So um, you would not be allowed to gather fruits that spilled out outside. Okay, if it were in the house, it would be allowed. Why? Because once again, in the house, since it is not in the place where it grows, so therefore it would be allowed. Now, um, another small example, which again isn't so relevant for us, but just to give an idea of what it is, would be salt. Okay, salt. There are two types of salt, two types of ways to get salt. There's an actual salt mines, right? And then there is to take water and to evaporate the salt water, to evaporate the salt water, and um, to get the salt that remains. So getting salt, once again, to to gather the salt is also going to be considered under the category of me'amel. Okay. Okay. Now, another thing that comes up because we were speaking about earlier was if a person is pressing, is if a person makes the fig cake or the fig circle, whatever it is. Sometimes what we do, either for kids or sometimes it's even for adults, what they have accustomed to take dates, okay, and to mash the dates and or mash the dates together with nuts and something like this to make it like a type of paste, so that the kids, if they want to eat it, they wouldn't choke on it, or even for old elderly people, also the same thing. So in this case, you would be allowed to do it, okay. However, and it's not going to be called, it's not going to, obviously not going to fit under the category of me'amer, but it's still might, it would be okay, and we'll explain the other possibility that it might fit under, because over here, and the way to do it, the way to do it would, you'd have to do it with a shino. So if you want to mash these, um if you want to mash these dates, okay, to make like a paste out of it, you would have to do it with shinoi, which means something different. For example, instead of using the normal part of the spoon or the fork or whatever utensil that you want to use to um, to mash it, you would have to use the opposite side. Okay. The reason for this is because there might be a problem. There might be a problem of tochen. Tochen, Bezat Hashem, as we go along, we're going to be learning it. Tochen is grinding, and mashing something also fits under the category of that. So now, when we're preparing it for children or for elderly, they need to eat, obviously, so it would be okay. The same thing would apply technically for bananas, right? Or for avocados, so that you want to mash for a baby, you want to give a baby to eat those things. If you were to want to do this on Shabbat, you would need to do it, you would need to mash it in a shinui. You would need to crush it with a shinui, which means the opposite end of the fork, or to find some other sort of way to show that there's a difference being done, in order to avoid this problem of tochen. Okay. Okay, so that's more or less for me'amer. Me'amer. Oh, sorry. Another example of something that would actually be practical that you should be careful for me'amer is, I know that some kids, they like to play, or they like to take, for example, Cheerios or Fruit Loops, and to make a necklace out of those things. This would also be a problem because, once again, you're taking something that grows from the ground and you're gathering it, you're kind of making it like the cake that we spoke about. And obviously the biggest problem of all of that would be to make the knot afterwards. If they make a double knot, it's a problem, and if they make a single knot, it usually won't hold anyway, so they always make a double knot, and that would not be allowed on Shabbat. Okay. The next the next minacha, is called dash, threshing. Now,
what is it? Dash what?
dash, daled shin. Okay, daled shin is threshing. What the melacha of dash is, it's basically separating the grains from its shell. Okay, so they would take like kind of like a bat or something similar. Okay, and they would beat the grains. Okay, they would beat the grains to separate the kernel from the husk. Okay, and then afterwards there would also be other steps that go with it as well. Now, when they do dash, right? Dash is something that actually um, comes up pretty often in our, we can say, in our lives. Um, One of the most common examples, okay, is hitting a live object and causing it to bleed. So hopefully, like, if it's kids hitting each other, hopefully it's not adults, right? If it's kids hitting each other, this would be a problem. If it's a person even hitting an animal, right? There's a dog or something like this. Obviously, if it's dangerous and you have to protect yourself, you have to protect yourself. But if it's just if a person is just upset at another animal and they hit it and they cause the blood to come out, there would be a problem of dash. when it happens. Another example of dash, which isn't relevant for our day to day, like for us in terms of people that live in the city, but is something that we need to deal with, is, for example, milking a cow. Okay. And I'm going to, Bezat Hashem, get onto women that are nursing as well, which fits more or less under the same category. Now, when you do that, what you are doing is obviously you're taking something out from the place that it's growing, right? So you're taking out the milk from the udders of the cow, and that fits under the category of dash. You would not be allowed to do that on Shabbat. However, there are some leniencies or some ways we can kind of get around it. For example, we know that if a cow that goes too long without being milked, without taking the milk out, it's very painful for the cow and it hurts it a lot. So, in this case, the ideal situation would be to um, to have a non-Jew milk the cow. Now, when you do that, you don't want to be using the milk because, again, this is something that was done bi-isur on Shabbat. Okay, that's one option. If the goy is not around and you wouldn't be able to ask the non-Jew to do it, whatever it is, so then you would be allowed to do it yourself. However, it's very important to note that if we were to do something like that, the milk would have to go to waste. Okay, so in order not to benefit from what we were doing on Shabbat, the only reason why we do it allow, um, is to relieve the animal from its pain, which is tsa'al ba'alei chayim, which is causing pain to animals, which is asur from the Torah to do. Okay, so that's why the Torah allows us to do something like that. However, in order to not benefit from what is being done, we have to let the milk go to waste. Now, what happens nowadays, and this is especially true when it comes to Jewish farms or technically almost anywhere in Israel, is they have what's called robotic milking. Okay, so the cow goes to wherever it needs to go. Like the cow knows that when it's full, when it feels that it needs to have all the milk taken out, so it knows on its own to go to the robot, and the robot basically milks it on its own. So when something like this happens, you would be allowed to, again, if it's a robot where everything happens on its own, that's another thing. But over here we're talking about where a person at least has to connect the machine to the udders. In that case, what they should do is the first drops that come out need to go to waste, kind of like what we were saying before, because we don't want to benefit from that. And the rest, since it's happening automatically, it goes on its own. So it um it would be allowed. Now, all that is for milk that comes from a cow. So in Israel, if you pay attention, very often you would have milk that's called mehadrin milk. Okay, and then there's the regular milk that doesn't have the mahadran milk. Now, technically, they're both from the same factories, right? I mean, they're both from the same companies, right? It can either be Tnuva, Tara. Those are the main milk companies that they have over there. There's a few other ones, but those are the main ones. And sometimes you would see it says mehadrin on it, and it doesn't say mehadrin. What would be the difference? So, from what I heard and what I understood, it was exactly this difference of where the Mehadrin ones they're sure and they're positive to bring milk that wasn't milked on Shabbat, meaning all the milk that comes in go to those bottles was milk that wasn't touched by Shabbat on Shabbat. And the if it's not Mehadrin, so it could be mixed with this milk that was milked on Shabbat. And a lot of the religious people, they say we don't want any of that. That's why they make sure to only drink the Mehadrin one. Okay. When it comes to a woman nursing, now, obviously, a woman would be allowed to nurse her child because the child needs to eat. There's no problem with that. There's no issue whatsoever. However, what happens when a woman feels that she needs to take out milk, okay, and the child isn't hungry at that point? The child doesn't want to eat. So they can't really force the child to eat. So what do? There's obviously the option of the hand pump. Okay, there are a few types of hand pumps, but what we must understand is that the same way that we said when you would be allowed to milk the cow in order to avoid paining the animal. However, the milk must go to waste. The same applies. The same applies when a woman would take out the milk. It must go to waste. So there are two ways there's basically the main way that they say to do it is to put a bit of soap or to put a bit of something inside the container so that when it comes out, it gets ruined right away, and this way all it's accomplishing is relieving the pain and the stress of having too much milk, and then afterwards, we move on regularly. But to keep the milk, to pump to pump the milk, even if it's by hand, and then to give it afterwards, to hold this for a while and give it afterwards to the baby, that would not be allowed. Okay. um another another category of dash, or another thing that could fit under the category of dash, would be with snow. Okay, snow and ice. Now, there's halacha that says you're not allowed to crush snow or ice on Shabbat, which would mean that, okay, Baruch Hashem, we live in Miami. I don't think there was ever snow in Miami, but we have ice, right? We have ice. We want to we have big pieces of ice and we want to crush them. You would not be allowed to do that on Shabbat because, again, it fits under the category of dash. Another another thing that comes up when we talk about ice is that there are two. Yes.
All right, can you just repeat what you said about the ice?
That we're not allowed to crush ice on Shabbat. Okay, so obviously we're not going to be using the fridge option of crushing ice, right? Because that's obviously electronic. But even once we have the ice out, we would not be allowed to crush it. Now, there are the big bags of ice that we buy, right? Or that you buy in the gas station or whatever it is. And if you were to want to break off pieces, that would not be called crushing ice. That would be called breaking off a piece of ice. But obviously that it means that it has to be like a big piece, right? You're breaking off a piece. You're not actually crushing it.
Oh, we're allowed to water, so it's melt.
Sorry.
We're allowed to melt it in our water to drink it.
Very good. So that's exactly what I was going to talk about right now. There are two ways. There are two ways to put ice in a cup to cool down the drink. There's one where we put the ice in the cup and then we pour the drink on top of it, and two where the drink is already inside the cup and then we add the ice to the drink. On Shabbat, a person should do the second way more, meaning on Shabbat, a person should try to first have the drink in the cup and then add the ice, and not the opposite way around, to put the ice and then to put the drink. Yes, I understand that it's sometimes more practical and more convenient to have the ice in the cup first and then to pour the drink on it. Why? Because it ends up being colder, because when the drink comes in contact with the ice on the bottom right away, it cools off the drink as we go along. But as we all know, what happens when we do that is the the drink that is being poured, it melts the ice. So I remember actually just seeing it recently in my own home, right? I put some ice in the sink, and then I just opened the sink. I opened the water in the sink to pour it on top of the ice, and you see it visibly in front of you. You see how the ice slowly it starts shrinking, and it happens fast enough. So basically, when you're pouring the water or the drink, whatever it is, on top of the ice, it's as if you are crushing the ice at that point. Okay, so that's why when you deal with that on Shabbat, you would have to do the opposite way around. You would have to first have the drink in your cup, and then you add the ice to it, because otherwise it would be considered that you're kind of melting, or you're kind of crushing the ice.
Rabbi,
Yes. Yes.
for Ashkenazim, or is it different?
No, it's the same for both. Same for
Okay.
both. We shouldn't be doing it. We shouldn't be doing the ice first and then the drink.
Also, I have a
Okay.
question. If we're putting ice in a cup for a cold drink, like iced coffee, and we don't want it to splash to put the ice after, do we put the ice before in the cup?
So once again, that doesn't really change what ends up happening. I could suggest, if you want to do something like that, what you would do is you can take like a spoon, or you can take something that you have inside the cup, and once the cup is already full, right, you slowly slide the ice from your hand to the spoon, or from wherever it is to the spoon, and have it slowly drop in. Once you already have two ice cubes inside the milk, inside whatever, inside the cup, it's no longer going to splash. So it's only relevant for the first two, or maybe even three, and you're easily able to just, like, slide those few pieces in, that it shouldn't make a splash. Okay. Now, another very common form of dash that comes along is when we're dealing with either, you can say, like seeds, or I'll give a common example is also peanuts, right? So here in America, I haven't seen it as often, but the peanuts that come with either the actual shell, right, where you have the double shape, okay, or you have the peanuts that just come in their peel, right? So the way the peanut grows, you have the nut, you have the case of the nut. Inside the case, there's usually two, one on each side. It's like two bubbles attached, and when you open it, you have the nut inside. Now, the nut inside still has a sort of peel, okay, like a brownish peel on it. In Israel, it's very common to just buy the peanuts with the peel. Here in America, we normally just buy the peanuts pre-salted already, although I'm sure that they have the ones with the peels as well. But most of the one we find that are salted, peeled, everything is like it's clean and ready to eat right away. But if you were to have this peel, and if it were to be other foods as well, the same type of style, you would have to be careful to how you how you deal with those peels while you eat. Meaning, you would obviously be allowed to remove the peel before eating. We don't expect you to eat the peel, or we don't expect you to put the peel in your mouth in order to take it out. However, you would not be able to do it um, in quantities not for eating right away. So if you would want to eat it, what you would have to do is you'd have to take whatever peanuts you want in your hand, okay? And then as you're eating, you slowly take off the peel, you slowly like rub off the peel with your fingers. Okay? The same thing applies technically, we can also say to pistachios. Okay, pistachios are also the same thing, where you have a peel on top and then the fruit on the inside. You would have to be doing it to eat right away. That's how you would have to do it. Okay?
I'm sorry, Chabad, don't. We don't do it on Shabbos.
To do what?
Pistachios, we don't take the pistachios, we are not allowed.
Okay. So yeah, so this is for the Sfaradim, that you would be allowed to remove the peel, obviously, to eat. I didn't know the particular the Chabad halacha, but in terms of achila, and in terms of, again, what the Sfaradim, they say, it's derech achila bekach. As long as you're doing it to eat right away, you would be allowed to open it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now,
Rabbi,
sorry.
can I ask you a favor? Do you mind when you know by fact that the Ashkenaz do it different? Could you say, like, the Sephardi do it this way? I'm not sure of the Ashkenaz for me to know, like, oh,
So in general, I try making that difference. It's a bit harder when it comes to Chabad, because Chabad, they have their, like, not their own halachot, but they have different halachot sometimes than the Ashkenazim. Okay, when we learn Shulchan Aruch, so the Shulchan Aruch, it has the Ashkenaz and the Sepharad inside as well, inside the same book, right? You have the Ashkenaz, you have the Sepharad, you have the Rabbi Yosef Karo that he wrote the Shulchan Aruch, and then as part of the Shulchan Aruch integrated into the Shulchan Aruch is the Rama, Rabbi Moshe Iselis. So the two of them are together, and when we learn halacha, so we learn the two. But when it comes to Chabad, it's a bit different because they have a separate book of Shulchan Aruch, which is technically based off of the Shulchan Aruch as well. It's not as if Chas v'Shalom it's a different religion, but it's a separate book with what the Rab Shlomo Zalman, right, the original Rebbe, he came up with his halachot based on whatever he learned. So it's a bit
Separate, so I know I'm a different character, but at least if you could like know, so if you could say Ashkenaz.
Be'ezrat Hashem. Be'ezrat Hashem. If it comes up, Be'ezrat Hashem, with pleasure. Okay.
Rabbi, just because you mentioned the snow, so if our kids playing in the snow on Shabbat, if they're gathering the snow, they're not allowed to gather to make a snowball.
So I remember growing up, we would often do that. We would often try to, have our snowball fights and make the igloos and all that. And my father would always tell us, you can't do that on Shabbat. You can't play with the snow on Shabbat, especially if it's snow that fell on Shabbat, right? You can't do that. The halacha, what we were talking about right now, was risuk, was to like kind of crush it, right? If you have snow that's put together, you have like a snow fort, or you build like a snowman or something like that, and you want to crush it. That's what the halacha was referring to. Building and playing with the snow might fit under other categories. Okay. Now, something else that fits under this category of dash, which is also very, very, very common and very relevant, is squeezing. Okay, what does it mean to squeeze? It means that, let's say you were to squeeze a fruit juice, right? So there are people that they love drinking freshly squeezed juice. Okay, there are different categories as to what's the level of isul on most of them. However, it's important to know that almost never would it be allowed to squeeze directly a fruit or whatever it is directly for its juice. Okay, you will not be able on Shabbat. You will not be able on Shabbat to make freshly squeezed orange juice, to make pomegranate juice, or carrot juice, almost for sure not, because you need an actual blender for something like that. But even to squeeze the common fruits that we have, you would not be allowed to squeeze them on Shabbat for fresh juice. The exception, I guess we can say, to this rule comes when we want to squeeze something. I'll give the common example, right? Let's say squeezing lemons. Okay. When it comes to squeezing lemons, it's a bit complicated, because the Shulchan Aruch, when he talks about squeezing lemons, he says you're able to squeeze lemons. And the reasoning behind that is why? Because people don't drink lemon juice. However, we obviously know that nowadays people do drink lemon juice, right? People drink it. People squeeze lemon. It's healthy. They squeeze it in. They have it with hot water or whatever form they like to have it. I know personally, when I have a sore throat, or when I have like something is wrong with my throat a little bit, I know I squeeze a fresh lemon, and just drink the lemon as it is. It's great for the throat. So there are plenty of people that they still are squeezing lemon. So when the Shulchan Aruch says that it's allowed, it obviously has changed a little bit due to the facts of nowadays. However, it doesn't mean that we can't squeeze lemon on Shabbat. Why? Because most of the time when we're squeezing lemons, okay, we don't squeeze the lemon in a cup. We don't squeeze the lemon as it is. We squeeze the lemon into usually, as it happens more often than not, into a salad. Okay, we squeeze the lemon, and the juice ends up directly on food. Now, the difference between the two is as follows. If I were to take a lemon, I slice a part of the lemon and I put it on a food or in a plate or anything, right? There's no problem with that. I'm allowed to slice a lemon, right? I'm allowed to slice an orange. I'm allowed to slice a fruit to put it wherever I want, to do whatever I want, as long as, like, obviously it's part of the eating. So when I take a lemon and I squeeze the lemon onto the food, what's happening is this juice. Yes.
No, I say it's part of the food.
Very good. So this juice that is coming out right now, it's getting directly onto the food, and it becomes part of the food, and it's basically considered like I just cut off a piece of the lemon, because the lemon is the same, right? The juice of the lemon is still part of the lemon, so everything stays the same. It's just that I'm taking like a part of the lemon and putting it into the salad. However, if I were to squeeze a lemon into an empty cup for the juice, so now I just squeezed for the juice, right? Now I have a juice. The first part, when you squeeze it directly onto the food, so what's happening is we're saying that it's getting directly onto the food, so it's considered part of the food, and it's going to be considered like I just sliced off a piece of a lemon and I put it into the food. Okay, so
Water.
yeah.
What happens when you squeeze it on top of water?
Very good. So we want it to be on top of food, not on top of liquid. So for that, let's say a person wants to make lemonade on Shabbat.
No,
Okay.
you said that you're sick and you want to take a hot water with lemon. Like you said that.
Very good. So you shouldn't be squeezing lemon into water either.
Why?
Okay. Because since water is a liquid, it's not a food. There's a difference between liquid and food, meaning food is solid and liquid is liquid, right? So the whole problem is to squeeze it for the liquid. So if I'm squeezing it into another liquid, I didn't really get around that problem, because it's still I'm squeezing out a liquid to be a liquid. When I squeeze it into the food, so now I'm squeezing it onto a solid for it to be part of the solid. Okay? So if we were to want to make, for example, lemonade. Okay, lemonade on Shabbat, we know what is the purpose of squeezing the lemon is to make it into a liquid. The way to make lemonade on Shabbat, okay, and the same thing applies, I guess, for Yom Tov also, although Yom Tov is a little bit easier, but yes, would be says the Ben Ish Chai, he says it's otiyot sulam. Sulam in Hebrew means ladder, okay? And he just says that's the way to remember the order of how to do the lemonade. So if we take the word sulam, right? I'm going to spell it in the short form because that's all we need. Sulam is samech, lamed, mem. Okay? Samech, lamed, mem. Samech stands for sukar. Sukar is sugar, right? Lamed stands for limon, the lemon, and the mem stands for mayim, water. So when you want to make lemonade on Shabbat, the way you would have to do it is in this order. First, you would put the sugar in the cup. Okay, you squeeze the lemon onto the sugar. Sugar, we know, is a solid. It's a food, right? It's maybe not so healthy, but it's a food. You squeeze the lemon onto the sugar. So now you took care of the problem of squeezing a lemon, that it shouldn't be liquid right away. And then on top of that sugar, together, mixed together with a bit of lemon, you add the water. So that now you have lemonade, right? You're able to do the lemonade. It's perfectly fine. Everything is great. But you did it in a manner that is permitted without having to deal with the problem of that you're squeezing the lemon for its juice.
Honey will consider like sugar, like, yeah.
It's complicated. It's complicated because
It's sticky, sometimes
very good, but honey, when we talk about honey, let's say, okay, or syrups or similar things, if they're called liquid or they're called solid, okay, I'm going to give the example of what we use for soap, okay. This is here. I'm going to bring up the difference between the Ashkenazim and the Sfaradim now. When it comes to using soap on Shabbat, okay, so the Ashkenazim, they have to have what's called soap water, okay. Sfaradim, we don't really have that issue, but for the Ashkenazim, it's very important that they don't use regular soap on Shabbat. They don't use regular dish soap, right? Liquid soap, and for sure, nothing what to talk about the bar soap. Okay, on Shabbat we shouldn't be using the bar soap at all. When it comes to the liquid soap, okay, so the Ashkenazim, they have the custom that what needs to be done is the soap needs to be like a liquid. Okay, the soap needs to be really loose, really like it's kind of like flowing. The Sfaradim, on the other hand, for them it's not so much of an issue. They can use the soap however it is without having to dilute it.
Shabbat, they just take the soap, mix it with water in a different vase or container.
Yes. So technically, the Ashkenazim, they can do it even on Shabbat, right? If they did, again, preferable that they should do it before Shabbat. That they should add, let's say, on the side, they take a small soap dispenser and they put soap and then they add a lot of water to make it watery, right? They prepare this for Shabbat. If they didn't manage to prepare it before Shabbat, you can do it even on Shabbat for the Ashkenazim.
So if I have Ashkenazi guests, I need to prepare it for them.
No.
If they're gonna clean the house.
They come to eat by me, they go to the restaurant. No,
If they're gonna
go
clean the
to the
dishes.
restaurant, they need to wash their hands.
No,
It's
no,
soap.
not for the soap, I would never. For cleaning the
I
hands.
think for the dishes, it's more.
Oh, it's not for their hands?
No.
Again, it's for the hands, the same thing. For the hands, for the dishes, the same thing. They don't use regular soap. In fact, I actually remember going to the Grove once, and there was this guy. He comes and he asks them, "Do you have soap for Shabbat?" The guy's like, "Soap for Shabbat?" He's like, "Yeah, like like the really watery soap." He's like, "No, sorry, I don't have that, but you can make it on your own." And the guy's like, "Well, I don't understand. Like, why can't you guys just have this ready? Like, have a ready soap for Shabbat?" Again, it's really simple to make it. It's really simple to deal with it. It's not complicated. But again, that's how the Ashkenazim. That's what the Ashkenazim hold. They hold that you need to have this soap water prepared before Shabbat. So
They use the liquid toothpaste.
Everybody don't use toothpaste.
Yes.
on Shabbat.
No, you
Ashkenazim or Sfaradim.
Sfaradim, I think they are now.
No, מה פתאום?
no, the bar soap is never allowed.
No, the toothpaste. משחת שיניים.
גם לא
Okay,
עליו.
toothpaste. So very good. When it comes to toothpaste, Rav Ovadia writes about the toothpaste. He says it's better not.
It's
Okay,
better.
he says it's better not. He doesn't say that it's asur, but he says it's better not to use it. I personally, when I brush my teeth on Shabbat, I do it kind of. You can say it's a shinui, but it's even more than that. What I do is I take the toothpaste on my finger, I put the toothpaste in my mouth from my finger, and then start using the toothbrush. Okay. Sorry?
Or we can use liquid like Sidon.
Yes, very good. So in Israel, you can use mouthwash, right? You can use mouthwash. In Israel, they have like a special thing. I know it's like a green or white tube with like a small small neck that they put. It's like a really concentrated, like mouthwash type of thing that you put it on the toothbrush, and you can brush your teeth with that. Yes.
Toothbrush need to be
It's a
toothbrush
liquid
for
just to the night
Shabbat, no?
I do it at home.
You know when
In
you're
order
brushing,
to-
you're gonna bleed, you can
Running
brush
goes.
with this. Let me get-
Okay. So this is you know, this is the argument, or this is the I guess you can say like the debate when they talk about this soap, right? So they say what's considered to be watery soap, what's considered to be thicker soap. So they say that when it's like when you pour it and it pours directly like water, this would be considered liquid, right? When you pour it and it starts coming out in clumps, okay, if it starts coming out clumpy, this is considered more solid. So at the end of the day, is honey considered, you know, sometimes you have honey that's really you know, really thin, that I don't know if it's actually honey, but again, they advertise it as honey, but it pours really fast and really easy. And then you have honey that's really thick, that's, you know, it takes a long time for it to pour. For example, if you put honey in the fridge, you're going to see like when it hardens, so then it's very hard for it to pour, and it would be more considered like a solid than a liquid. But again, it's very complicated when you get to those you know, when you get to those situations. You say, is it liquid, is it solid, like what's going on? So it's better to try to avoid that if possible. Okay. We don't have a lot of time left right now, so we're gonna stop. Maybe we're gonna continue a little bit more of this, Be'ezat Hashem, next week. But for now, Be'ezat Hashem, we're gonna go to Kashrut, Be'ezat Hashem.
I will just switch the